This week we'll walk together through one of Paul's shorter letters, the Epistle to the Philippians. Short though it may be, it is a really consequential letter. It also happens to be the epistle set of readings for this week in the daily lectionary. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Monday, September 8th, 2025. The letters of Paul that we have for a reason. Paul has some important things to say to a variety of congregations. Some of the issues differ, but Paul follows a consistent pattern in all of his letters. He identifies an issue or cluster of issues facing the particular church and seeks to guide the church in facing that issue or issues and solving whatever problems the issues cause. In nearly every letter, there is some religious or philosophical belief that comes from the surrounding culture that threatens to pull the church apart. Philippians is no different. The difficulty, and this is true of all of Paul's letters, is that we're reading just one part of a larger conversation. There is a shared history between Paul and the Philippians, which means he doesn't have to describe the issue that threatens the church. They know what the issue is just as well as he does. As a result, we have to draw inferences from his writing to help us understand the problem or issue he's addressing. Let's say I wrote a letter to the congregation that was published in the Steeple Times addressing how far the church has come since the often acrimonious divisions that threatened to split the church a couple of decades ago. Folks in the church who were here 25 years ago would know exactly what I was talking about. Folks who joined the church more recently would have no idea what I was talking about. Now let's pretend that three or 400 years from now, someone found that letter in an archive somewhere. They too would have no idea what the conflict in the church had been about. They would look for clues in my letter, but they can only infer from some of what I wrote in making some educated guesses about the nature of the long ago conflict. That's what we deal with often in reading Paul's letters. We only have one part of a larger conversation between people who themselves know the context, the situation, and don't really need to say it and spell it out. Paul clearly wasn't thinking that he was writing a letter that would be read hundreds and hundreds of years later. If he had, he would no doubt have given us a fuller explanation of the situation. But as it is, we have to infer a lot. But this doesn't mean we can't also learn a lot from Paul. And there is indeed a lot to learn in Philippians. The passage for today comes from the opening chapter, and much of it sounds at first like a lot of boilerplate stuff. But it actually contains some important clues about the underlying issue he wants to address. Paul writes, "I thank my God every time I remember you, constantly praying with joy in every one of my prayers for all of you, because of your sharing of the gospel from the first day until now. I am confident of this, that the one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion by the day of Jesus Christ. It is right for me to think this way about you because you hold me in your heart, for all of you share in God's grace with me, both in my imprisonment and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel. For God is my witness, how I long for all of you with the compassion of Christ Jesus. And this is my prayer, that your love may overflow more and more with knowledge and full insight to help you to determine what is best, so that in the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless, having produced the harvest of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ for the glory and praise of God." This sounds boilerplate because Paul begins, as he often does, by writing affectionate words to the congregation. Scholars call this his Thanksgiving passage. He clearly has a soft spot in his heart for the Philippian church. He knows them personally, has been there, spent time with them, and apparently even founded that church. So his relationship to this particular congregation is especially warm. In fact, scholars point out that one of the ways we know that of the intimacy between Paul and this church is that, unlike other letters, there is not a word here about his authority to even write the letter to begin with. Paul frequently has to assert his apostolic bona fides to other churches, but not to the Philippians. There is a bit of a clue in this passage also about the life of the congregation that may have been a reason for him to write this letter. It's what he says at the end of the passage that gives our clue when he writes, "This is my prayer, that your love may overflow more and more with knowledge and full insight to help you to determine what is best, so that in the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless, having produced the harvest of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ for the glory and praise of God." Was there conflict in the church that threatened the bonds of love? Possibly. But then again, why should we be surprised? Conflict is an inevitable result of being in community with different people. Differing opinions on matters great and small have a way of creating conflict. That's not really the issue. The issue is whether the bonds of Christian love within the Philippian church were strong enough to bind them together even in their conflict. So this is Paul at his very best. For Paul knows that love, if it is strong enough to bind a congregation together, is more than the sort of sentimental claptrap that most people mean when they talk about love. Love, in this case, doesn't avoid conflict. Love mitigates conflict, cuts it down to size, helps folks work through their conflict. He doesn't spell it out here as fully as he does in his correspondence with the church in Corinth, in that great 1 Corinthians 13 passage, but that's probably because he doesn't have to, not with the Philippians. He doesn't have to teach them what love is. He only has to remind them of love's overriding importance in their life together. He just has to remind them who they are. Tomorrow, Paul tips his hand a little bit about what he thinks is really important in the life of the church. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.